No, I tend to agree, Simone. First of all, it's great to be back on the weekend again and see both of you. I think that's absolutely right on a certain level. There are those who call themselves ADOS, Americans of African descendants of slavery, and they are questioning whether or not she's black or not. And I think at the heart of that argument and at the heart of what Donald Trump is doing is a basic misunderstanding. Donald Trump is a little bit more sinister, right? There is this understanding of race in the United States that's very structured, that goes back to the one drop rule. There's a conflation here of racial hierarchy and ethnicity that's going on here. In so many ways, I want to just say that this is a distraction, and it reveals not only how insidious Donald Trump is, but how dumb he is. This is a clown show on so many ways, and I don't want the campaign to get caught up in it. I want the campaign to continue to pursue its message. We're not going back, we're going forward. We don't want to go back to that mess, but those of us who have to address it, we need to address it with the seriousness of history and the seriousness of our moment, I think. But I think you're absolutely right that he's trying to appeal to those ADOS people, Simone. He absolutely is.
Meanwhile,
if it doesn't matter, I don't understand why you keep on repeating it, why the president keeps on repeating it, why those introducing the president yesterday
George,
keep on
actually,
repeating
I'm
it.
not the one who keeps repeating it. George, you're the one that's bringing it up now. That's you.
You've done it,
I understand why
sir.
you've done it.
You've done it 3 times. Every single answer you gave me. Now let me finish, sir.
George,
every single answer you gave, you repeated the slur.
Asked me, George. That's why I'm pushing back on you now. George, you asked me the question 3 times. I responded, but I'm.
And every single time you repeat the slur. That is exactly my point. You simply can't say that it's wrong.
George, so then what you're saying, and I want to get off this topic because it's not the only.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I gotta tell you guys, the mainstream liberal media is still in a full-blown meltdown over Trump's comments questioning Kamala Harris's race, okay? Because it opened up a can of worms that, quite honestly, this is what the Kamala campaign and the mainstream liberal media were asking for, because they just refuse to talk about policy. They refuse to talk about the issues that the American people actually care about. So Trump essentially threw the identity politics card back in the Democrats' face by questioning Kamala Harris's race, since Kamala Harris is quite literally running on being a so-called black woman. Okay, that's it. That's her whole platform. I mean, her website does not have any policies on it because, again, she's running just off identity politics. That's it, right? And Trump pulled the ultimate identity Trump card on Kamala Harris, which was to question her identity, and it was a genius move. Okay, and the reason why it was a genius move is because it has infuriated the mainstream liberal media in ways that are very, very, very fascinating to analyze. For example, black liberals, as you guys saw at the beginning of this video, they want this to go away, right? They want to stop talking about Kamala Harris's identity or if she's actually black, because they all know that a lot of black people don't actually believe that Kamala Harris is black.
What 4 words would immediately let you know about who I am? It's not in the vocabulary.
Is that when people question your blackness, you were on that bus, you were part of the civil rights movement, but the struggle is convincing people that this is a strong black woman who lives a strong black life, and why is there any question?
You're right, it's frustrating. There was this one journalist who said to me, I'm doing this interview, and he says, well, you have family members that went to Stanford and Harvard, but you chose to go to Howard. No, elite schools like Stanford, but you chose to go to Howard. Now, you know I was ready to hang this thing up.
Right.
I was literally, I was about to go off, which would not have been cool, because I'm trying to get elected.
Yeah, but you went to Howard.
They went to these elite schools, and you went to, and I said, well, you do know that Howard University is the Mecca.
Exactly.
Okay, and that is a big deal when your whole campaign is built off this idea that you are black, right? And you should vote for me because of that. So again, if there are questions about if Kamala Harris is actually black, that strikes at the heart of a core reason why a lot of people are supporting Kamala Harris, or they feel compelled to support Kamala Harris. And hey, don't get me wrong, it works. In regards to identity politics, we know, because look at Chicago. Black people all lined up and voted for Brandon Johnson, even though he was progressive as hell. He told them to their faces that, yes, I'm pro-open borders, I'm pro-sanctuary cities, I am a lunatic. They voted for him anyways simply because he was black, okay? This is a Trojan horse, okay? So again, black liberals are panicking, and they don't want to talk about this anymore. They don't want to have this conversation because they know that, again, Kamala Harris ain't actually black, okay? Now, when it comes to white liberals, they are especially uncomfortable because they, in their minds, know that Kamala Harris isn't really black, but they never dare crack their lips and actually say it out loud or even entertain the conversation because they don't want to be called racist. In fact, white liberals are so guilty that they feel the need to do the reverse, to actually attack anybody, regardless of your race or your skin color, if you question Kamala Harris's blackness, because white liberals are the puppet masters for a lot of these so-called black women. And best believe Kamala Harris is a puppet, and the puppet masters know that she ain't actually really black. So again, they have to fight back against any accusation or any questioning of their puppets' ethnicity or race, or they understand that this is a threat to the so-called black vote.
So I don't think this is necessarily a good thing. But what I will say is that for a lot of Americans, particularly a lot of black Americans, there is some sense of discomfort about the fact that when you look at high profile, high status, successful black Americans, many of them are themselves multiracial, first or second generation Americans, immigrants or kids of immigrants, or they're themselves intermarried. There are some folks, there's a group called the American Descendants of Slaves, ADOS, a kind of emerging movement that you see in some spaces where people say, hey, wait a second, you have folks who are not part of this multi-generational, long black American story who are claiming this mantle. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, Lulu.
I'm just saying that this is an argument that you are putting forward.
This is something I'm talking about as an analyst to describe the fact that the black community is not a monolith. There are a lot of complicated, conflicted feelings. More than twice as many black Americans oppose intermarriage as white Americans.
Your skin color is black, you're black. It is a completely ridiculous argument to be made in a country where you had the one drop, where you had the one drop rule, where you were actually penalized legally in this country if you had a single drop of black blood, to now say that this woman who is clearly black is somehow suspicious and is wearing a mantle and trying to assume some kind of ridiculous identity.
I'm describing public opinion. I'm describing the fact that this current does exist. And I think that when we're trying to understand the electorate,
let Raihan talk.
I think it's important to understand that this is one of those cleavages. I do not think that it was a good thing for Donald Trump to use this line of attack. I agree with Kara. Stick to policy.
This is not what Donald Trump was doing. You are trying to explain something. If you asked Donald Trump, what were you up to, Mr. Trump? He's not going to be like, you know, that there's this current in the African American community that talks about the descendants of slavery. Do you think that is what he was up to? He was going there in order to do what he always does, which is to throw as much as he can against the wall and to see what
I'm afraid part of what I'm trying to do is actually try to give some insight into the fact that public opinion is changing, it's divided, and there is a big conversation about this. I don't think that this is the best angle to pursue, but I do think that when you're talking about the black community, he's not looking to win 90% of the black vote. He's looking at what are interesting cleavages and divides within that population, and this is one of them.
Guys, I want you to understand that we've come full circle on this topic, right? This is why I love the fact that Trump said what he said, because now the media is playing defense, okay? What are white liberals and Democrats using as justification for drowning out any questions about Kamala Harris's race? They're literally saying, no, you can't question her race because of the one drop rule. They're literally using white supremacist, racist ideology that they're supposed to be against in order to defend this idea that Kamala Harris is black. This is how desperately they don't want anybody to question Kamala Harris's race. Well, why is that? Well, the reason why, which is why this is such a genius line of attack from Trump, is because, like that guy was explaining in the clip, there are a significant amount of black people in this country that do not consider Kamala Harris to be black, okay? And you saw how that white liberal woman, who's also a Latina, but just like Sunny Holston, she probably comes from a line of conquistadors, okay? So we know, again, she has the colonizer mindset, right? Which is why she's adhering to the one drop rule, okay? In order to defend Kamala Harris's blackness. But she's freaking out because they don't want to admit the truth, okay? Which is that there are a significant amount of black people in this country that don't believe Kamala Harris is black. And if that is the case, then that actually lends credibility to this argument that Kamala Harris is fake, okay? That she is not somebody to be trusted, that she would change her racial identity in order to get ahead, to advance her career, okay? Which again, calls into question her authenticity. And one thing that will destroy your career in politics very quickly is if people feel that you are a complete and total phony, right? You are a fake person, okay? People like authenticity. So again, white liberals are losing their minds, right? They are losing their minds on television over anybody questioning Kamala Harris's blackness. And we have another white liberal, George Stephanopoulos, who is going to get upset with Byron Donalds because he won't denounce what Trump said about Kamala Harris. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Why is former President Trump questioning the vice president's racial identity?
Well, first, George, in Chicago, he was responding to a question from, I believe, Rachel Scott. Like, this is really a phony controversy. I don't really care. Most people don't. But if we're going to be accurate, when Kamala Harris went into the United States Senate, it was AP that said she was the first Indian-American United States senator. It was actually played up a lot when she came into the Senate. Now she's running nationally. Obviously, the campaign has shifted. They're talking much more about her father's heritage and her black identity. It doesn't really matter. The president mentioned it. What he also talks about far more frequently is the fact that Kamala Harris is the person who created this massive inflation, which is destroying black families, white families, Hispanic families. It's her failure as border czar that has left our southern border wide open, more than 10 million illegal immigrants coming into our country, record fentanyl coming into our country, which has killed more Americans than at any other point in the history of our country with respect specifically to fentanyl. And the fact that she and Joe Biden have unleashed one of the worst foreign policies in the history of our country that has us on the verge of World War III. That is Kamala Harris's record. President Trump talks about that frequently, but yes, he did mention it in Chicago in response to a question from Rachel Scott.
Yeah, so what I told you guys about one of the reasons why Trump saying that is so genius is because now the mainstream media, because they're obsessed with race, they want to talk about it all day. They're bringing on Republicans to defend it because they think that, oh, well, Republicans, this is going to make them look bad, right? And Republicans, what they're doing is that they are actually just taking this opportunity to talk about policy. See what Byron Donalds just did? Byron Donalds just took the opportunity to talk about the issues and the policies which the mainstream liberal media refuses to talk about, okay? But in this situation, George Stephanopoulos is going to recognize what Byron Donalds is doing, and he's going to lose his white liberal mind.
And you just repeated the slur again. If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
Why are you assuming that Jamaican equals black? Jamaican does not equal black, okay? See, this is what these people are confusing. They're getting nationality and race mixed up. Apparently, they don't know the difference. Jamaican is a nationality, okay? Black is a race. Kamala Harris, there's no proof that Kamala Harris is actually of the black race, right? There's actually zero proof, okay? In fact, there's actually no chance that Kamala Harris is at least half black. Like, there's zero chance. Like, I know this for a fact, considering how her father admitted to being a descendant of an Irish slave owner, okay? So she definitely got some white in her. She definitely half Indian. And her father most likely also is Indian as well, too. So, again, there's no proof whatsoever that Kamala Harris is black. Her running as a so-called black woman should be offensive, right? This country should be offended by this woman abusing and weaponizing a fake identity in order to win votes. And again, this is the conversation that the mainstream liberal media desperately doesn't want to have. This is why they are trying to silence anybody that criticizes Kamala Harris's race or ethnicity, because they know that there's some truth behind it. And why do you say this? How do you know this for certain? The reason why you know this for certain is, let's say, for example, Michelle Obama ran for president and he said, well, I don't know if she's actually black. Again, Trump will look foolish. Well, the reason why is because I think everybody can clearly see that Michelle Obama is black, okay? Now, again, the whole, black woman part of it, I don't know. Again, that's alleged, but I'm just saying that Michelle Obama clearly is black. So it's not something that would ever be said, okay? And nobody would ever take anything like that seriously. But the fact that these people are even entertaining this conversation, that they're so pissed off about it, that they're so mad about it, tells you everything you need to know about the legitimacy of it. These people have no proof that Kamala Harris is black. This is why they have resigned themselves to basically going with, well, one drop rule, right? Even if she has one drop of black, then she's black. Okay, well, every white person in this country that has one drop of black blood should be identified as black too. Again, that's the easy follow-up, right? Anybody using the one drop defense, okay, why is it that every white person in this country can't identify as black? Oh, well, they don't have the lived experience of a black person. Well, Kamala doesn't either. Look at Kamala growing up. She has the lived experience of an Indian woman. She lived in Canada, right? Like, come on. She does not have the lived experience of a black person. So there's nothing about Kamala Harris that is as black as the average white person in this country that has one drop of black blood.
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There were a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue.
Sir, 1 second. You just did it. You just did it again.
Of the United States.
What Byron Donalds should have said was, there are a significant amount of black people in this country that do not feel that Kamala Harris is authentic. They don't think that she's actually black. They think that she weaponizes her blackness for political gain. Come on, Byron. You got skin color covering, okay? You can make this argument with the white liberal. In fact, that is the argument you should be making, because it then puts George Stephanopoulos in a very awkward position as a white liberal to have this conversation about how the black community feels about Kamala Harris being black. That is a very uncomfortable spot for somebody like George Stephanopoulos to be in. This is why that lady was so triggered when that guy was making an argument saying that, well, black people actually believe this. And she was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're making that argument. I can't believe you're actually saying that black people believe it. Well, again, why are they so triggered about it? Because they can't deal with that, because it's the truth. And the last thing that the media wants to acknowledge is the truth, right? So they try to stray away from the truth as much as they can.
Why do you insist on questioning her racial identity?
You want me to talk?
I want you to answer my question.
George, now that you're done yelling at me, let me answer. He talked about it on the stage yesterday in Atlanta for, what, 2 minutes? He spent more than 35, 40 minutes going after her record, talking about how radical of a senator that she was. She was the most liberal senator in the United States, in the United States Senate. That is a fact. He talked about the job that she did as vice president of the United States, a job, I will add, which has been a failure for the American people. I know you guys like to glom on to this that he talks about in jest or in a serious manner for about a minute or so, but what you do not cover is the litany of failures of Kamala Harris.
Facts.
That's what you're not covering, George.
Facts. That's what you got to do. That's what you have to do. Use this as an opportunity to point out the fact that the liberal media does not talk about Kamala Harris and her policies, her agenda. She doesn't have an agenda. And the media is complicit in covering it up because they're corrupt, okay? They're an arm of the Democrat Party, and you have to make the argument, right? You have to turn it into a policy discussion. They would not be having these discussions with Republicans if it wasn't for what Trump said. So you got to take advantage of it.
So questioning somebody's racial identity for a couple minutes is okay?
George, I'm going to tell you again, he brought it up. AP is the one that wrote the headline when she first came in to the United States Senate. Didn't talk about her being black, talked about her being the first Indian American senator. AP brought that up. I mean, George, we could have this conversation for the entire segment, but none of this matters to the American people. What matters to the American people is, are we going to have the same policies of the Biden-Harris administration that has been destructive of the American people, or are we going to have the policies of the Trump administration, which put America first, had low inflation, prosperous Americans, no matter your race, no matter your color, no matter your creed, and a foreign policy that kept America safe? Those are the facts that truly matter, because this issue is going to come and go. The lives of the American people is what's going to remain, and that's what matters more than anything else.
If it doesn't matter, I don't understand why you keep on repeating it, why the president keeps on repeating it, why those introducing the president yesterday
George,
keep on repeating it.
I'm not the one who keeps repeating it. George, you're the one that's bringing it up now. That's you.
You've done it.
I understand why why
Sir,
you've done it.
You've done it 3 times. Every single answer you gave me. Now let me finish, sir.
George,
every single answer you gave, you repeated the slur.
Asked me, George. That's why I'm pushing back on you now. George, you asked me the question 3 times. I responded, but I'm.
And every single time you repeat the slur. That is exactly my point. You simply can't say that it's wrong.
George, so then what you're saying, and I want to get off this topic because it's not the only thing that's going on. But George, now you're saying that AP is the one that slurred Kamala Harris, because those are the facts. You can go to the internet and look at the clips, George, if you want to, or we can talk about this now. I prefer to talk about the future of our country because the American people are struggling. The American people do need serious policy decisions to be made, and they need serious leadership on the world stage. Kamala Harris has not proven that she can do that. Donald J. Trump has proven that he can do that.
AP did not say that Kamala Harris is not black. She is biracial. She is Indian. She is black. You continue to repeat the fact that you continue to repeat the slur. I don't understand why you and the president do it, but it's clear you're not going to say that it's wrong. And you've now established that for our audience. Trump also said at the convention that he would pardon January 6 rioters.
Everybody look for themselves. Let's move on.
I've already said that. Go ahead.
On the internet, everybody. Let's move on. There we go.
So, you go on and repeat the slurs again. Trump also said at the
repeating slurs. Wow. But I want you guys to notice something, right? Before I get into George Stephanopoulos. Notice how the next topic he wants to talk about is January 6th. So he wants to spend time talking about Kamala Harris's race. He wants to spend time talking about January 6th. None of these things, at least not to thinking people, have anything to do with what people are concerned about. But, you know, for the left, apparently this is something that's a big issue for them, right? Which is, again, why they continue to want to talk about it. The mainstream media, they're so dumb that they don't understand they're falling into Trump's trap by continuing to talk about this, right? That they're now legitimizing what Trump is saying by talking about it. If they didn't talk about it, if they just moved on, if they just ignored it, then there would be less legitimacy, right? But Trump knows how deranged the media is, that he easily put them in a trap where now they are not doing fawning coverage over Kamala Harris 24/7, which is what they were doing before. Now they have to play defense. Now they're defending Kamala Harris, okay? But again, you have George Stephanopoulos, who's a white liberal, upset about what black people believe in this country. But where was this guy when his butt buddy, Joe Biden, told Charlamagne the God, you ain't black if you don't vote for me, right? If you don't know whether or not you're going to vote for me or Trump, you ain't black. Again, the media that's so upset about this had nothing to say about what Joe Biden told Charlamagne the God. So you already know that this is performative outrage meant to try to protect their puppet rather than some type of principle disagreement with questioning somebody's race, right? Because again, this is the side of the aisle that basically tells black conservatives that, hey, because you don't agree with Democrats, you ain't really black. They've done this for the longest time, and now all of a sudden they want to boohoo whine and cry. Are you questioning Kamala Harris' blackness? That's so wrong. Why are you doing that? Right? Again, it's just funny. It's just so hilarious. But again, you know, this is how you fight the left. You have to fight fire with fire. That's what you got to do. If they want to make the election about identity politics, okay. Because they're not trying to talk about policy, guys. They want to make the election about identity politics. And if you cower and say, oh, we don't want to do that, please stop attacking us as racist, you're going to lose because nobody respects that. But what people do respect is those who stand up and tell the truth, even if the truth is controversial, which is that Kamala Harris is not black, right? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.